Alright, I've been hard at work on this Nakamichi, but I think it's been worth it. Woo! So, turns out, these are the same long screws that the rest of the board uses, so there was no problem there. And I also found an additional screw that matches really well to... I'm not sure it actually is, the manufacturer even included that, but I did, to hold in this bracket even more firmly. And I also I found a screw that matched perfectly in that center spot where a screw was missing, which I'll double check to make sure that isn't on the frame, but I'm pretty positive. And then also I took the screw out here and replaced it with the right one, so now I have a matching set of the two screws that go here and here for this panel. So it turns out this panel, even though these black rings look, everything kind of looks the same over here, these are actually a little bit longer. So, really nitpicky kind of stuff. But here, this is the important thing. I added two heat sinks to these diodes here, these power diodes that are a secondary stage. And it looks like, part of the power conversion stage, basically, from AC to DC, because we have these bridge rectifiers all over the place. 1, 2, 3 of them. So, yeah, that's not a great design there, because you got these really hot resistors as well. And I guess they did it because they're figuring, well, that fan's right there. It's going to pull some of that heat away. But it kind of doesn't. And obviously, it didn't, because the board was like black down there, getting burnt to a crisp. So I added these heat sinks in here. Real tricky, because this guy started to come loose from the motherboard, and I did not want to remove this whole motherboard. I managed to reflow some solder onto the pins, which got down into the actual contacts underneath the board. Checked it with my meter, nothing is shorted, so I should be okay, though that was a scary moment. And then I added a little bit of Kapton tape on the bottom of this heatsink, so it doesn't short out any of the parts here, and also underneath this heatsink, even though it's not touching down there. So, measures to prevent shorting. All right, I'm happy to report a fully working Nakamichi AV-10 with our buddy wrist start. All the tone controls have now been restored. I can turn off the bass, turn up the treble, turn down the treble, and then of course the balance works. By the way, it's muffled over there because I have some boxes in front of the speaker. But it works fine. And all the knobs have been cleaned. Everything's been cleaned very nicely. I'm so happy. Oh, listen to that. Jam it out, Ristar. Yeah, I love Restart. So what all is there to report back on? Well, things for the most part are in order. One thing I actually thought of, as far as doing upgrades for the fan, which I still might do, because you'll see it's on right now. But what I realized, a couple things. One is there's a bunch of zip ties that hold together these coils of wire here. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off so I don't do anything bad to myself here. But the coils of wire, I think, might be very important because of the scorched kind of board down here, which is, there's a bridge rectifier. Let's see if I can get to it. So down in here, if it can, you see that, boy, it's going to be hard to get. That little circular thing near my finger, not the capacitor, but the one right above it, that is a bridge rectifier. And those suckers get pretty damn hot, as do these high wattage resistors. And you can see where the board, if I can maybe get a slightly better lighting, maybe. Come on. See if my camera will pick it up. Come on. There you go. You see where the board discoloration is there because of that diode and those resistors. I mean, it's hot down there. I would like to add some heat sinks eventually. But it occurred to me that maybe the reason the fan is on all the time is that it's actually, and I just turned off the receiver, that's why the fan's off, but when the receiver's ever on, the fan's always on. And I'm starting to think maybe it's because it's actually trying to blow cool air for that bridge rectifier section. It's not just to cool down this amp here. So there's a thought. What else do we have left? Or what other notes do we have? So the screw that's missing here, that was missing, I believe, when I got this. I think someone was definitely in here before. And I do have to add the Kapton tape for the fuse over here, and I do, at some point I'll remove my phono preamp stage that I added. That won't be hard to do. Hardest part is this thing is just heavy. But the front panel should be fine. The one little thing is the standby light isn't coming on, and I think it might just be the LED's not like in the socket or whatever. It's so hard to put that PCB back in. And then also this screw right here is probably a longer thread than it should be into that hole. I believe I swapped that screw with one of the other ones in the panel that's a little bit shorter. Aside from that, I did get the correct side screws here, which are supposed to be fairly short. The screws for the plastic here actually have a built-in washer, so that's important. And the screw down there for that guy is really, really long, so I got that one in there. These two screws are really, really long to go through the white plastic guides there. And yeah, I just got to add some zip ties. And if I can, without disassembling this whole thing, I'd like to get that standby light back on. Not a huge deal, of course. It's an LED that lets you know that power's plugged in. But yeah, really happy this is all working with the tone controls, super clean. No noise anymore. This bastard of a tone control switch I don't have to worry about anymore. It really was the thing that was killing me. So yeah, pretty stoked, man. Got some restore. Nakamichi AV-10 repair, baby. All right, just another Nakamichi AV-10 follow-up after it's all working and plugged in and was nice with restore. I wanted to make another note. Actually, these screws are just as long as all the other screws in here, so it was just the angling of it and getting the threading right in the plastic. But it's actually the same screw. So those two were actually totally fine. And the reason I had to take this all apart again was because this LED, which is the standby LED, gets easily knocked out of alignment, as does the one, there's another one down here. And that's why you couldn't see it on the display. It doesn't get it has to get in the little hole, the little plastic hole. So that is, by the way, why I'm sure I broke this PCB a long time ago with a flathead or something, trying to pry this up to get the LEDs knocked back in place without having to disassemble the whole panel again. But of course, we saw how that went. So I went ahead and disabled the whole panel, or took apart the whole panel again, so I could get to everything. And as we can see here, there is the bridged tone control mod, or is it a mod? Makes it work again anyway. And the only difference is when you press down that switch, you do not get no tone controls. You only get tone controls now, which is fine. You just set them at halfway or whatever. And then if I want to do a modification in the future, these two pins right here are a momentary push button when you use that toggle switch now. So this is just a momentary push button. If I really want to, I can undo these bridges, use that as a momentary push button to toggle either some relays or the analog devices analog multiplexer that I found, which functions off plus minus 15 volts. Because these come from an op amp that is plus minus 15 volts, so I'm very wary of using a low-level voltage analog multiplexer. Also, would make sense why they didn't use a low-level analog multiplexer. So yeah, it would take two of those analog devices chips. They're like $6.50 a pop. So I'm not like dying to get that in here the way I could. And it would be kind of cool to give it that original functionality for kind of just, you know, whatever. But I kind of want to see if I even care, honestly. And the loudness switch setting is perfect. So it turns out what's shown in the schematic as being connected is in fact the default. And when you press it, because you can put this upside down and then you actually have loudness defaulted. So that actually is all fine. And I do need to put the zip ties back on, of course, and all that jazz. And I do kind of want to use an air compressor in here. We'll see if I get around to that. But yeah, and then finally, I have these two small screws over here for this mounting this plate one of them is, they both work fine. One of them is just slightly shorter than the other, and I'm not sure if that's supposed to be like that. Doesn't really matter. But for completionist's sake. And then, of course, there is that one missing screw, mystery screw there, which I'm not sure why that's missing. I wonder if it came like that, or if I lost it many years ago. I don't know. But in any case, this is working, and I'm happy. I will take some pictures.